promise you that your €2 that you spend will go very far, both in terms of the rest of Freshers Week. We've still got lots of pizza, lots of honey balls for you, all day, every hour, on the hour. We've also got raffle prizes still going, so Nando's vouchers are still up for grabs. There's a suit worth €3,000 for you lads out there who like your class and formal wear. There's a skydive worth €300, and there's makeup hampers, 10 of them worth €50. So there's lots of stuff still up for grabs. Do come around the tent, do come say hi, and do come and try and get more involved in society. In terms of tonight, I'm just going to run through very briefly how this works. For those of you who haven't been here before, those of you who were here weren't paying attention. We run through the private business first of all, where the correspondent secretary and the record secretary get up and give brief speeches. Then we invite the guests who are going to speak today in this debate. They come and sit on either side, and then we kick off. They have 7 minutes to speak. In the first minute, it's protected. That means nobody else can say anything but them. And then I ding. And after that time, it's open season. If anyone wants to get up and ask a question or offer a point of information, they're welcome to. All you do is stand up and say, point of information, sir, point of information, madam. Like, that could be something like, no, you're wrong, or like an actual, like, logical point. It's up to them to accept you or not accept you. If they do, go on with your point as quickly as you can. Don't get into their time too much. If they don't, just sit down. There will be, and it will be open to the floor after all the speakers have spoken. And then you can ask anything you want. Just raise your hand, I'll point to you, and you can ask if it's to a specific speaker or to anyone at all in the debate, and get something clarified or challenge something that they've said. Okay. So without further ado, we're going to carry on with the private business of this meeting, and we'll begin with the correspondent secretary, Rob McCarthy.
Welcome to the pornography debate. Let's get sexy. Alright, I'll never recover from that. Yes, welcome back to the sexy world of college, where everyone is having sex repeatedly and noisily in the room next to mine. College is a very sexually intense kind of place. Look at it, it's Freshers Week right now, and every society is practically throwing condoms at you like your knob is a fucking dartboard. Last year, I was given a condom with a picture of a lion on it going roar. Because women find penises far more approachable if they're fucking lions. Realistically, like, well, what am I supposed to use this for? You know, sexual activity, or chewing the bollocks off an antelope? I mean, fine though my penis is, it's just not king of the jungle. It's barely king of my trousers. If I was to liken my penis to an animal, I would liken it to a spider, because women fucking hate spiders. I have a drawer of these angry lion condoms at home. I mean, like, how many penises do they think I have? I mean, realistically, you only ever need one condom. And when you're done, you just turn it inside out and go again. It works every time. Just ask my kids. To their kids. No, I think it's fairly obvious by now that I'm exceptionally hungover. I can't remember much from the night before, like most nights out. I vaguely recall being dry humped by an Arab woman, grinding against my leg. I don't know how Arab culture works, but she definitely owes me a dowry. Some cattle and an STI check, I think. Something to that effect. No, clubbing in college is fantastic. So you've got places like Coppers on Harcourt Street, which is effectively like shagging fish in a barrel. So everyone in there is, please, do something with this, please. Right. Still got the moves. No, because Coppers is bad for place. But the club nights are becoming, increasingly sexually aggressive. Because before, they used to be called things like, wet, a tripod. Maybe it'll be wet there. But now they're called things like sex fest and alchemy, the sex club, the magic sex, or cunt at cunt club. And, you know, which just sounds exhausting. I don't understand that for that. But yeah, you have these Facebook events, which are very good. The event pages where you comment and share for guest list, but you have to comment shit like jizz on my face at Sex Fest, which I love dicks and 2-for-1 drinks and comments. I mean, I couldn't post that. I mean, imagine if I was Facebook friends with my mother. It's like, oh, you know, Robert appears to be going to Whorefest at D2. I raised him well. But no, we're here today for, we're debating whether this house would ban pornography. So effectively, we're talking about banning all source material for wanking. I don't think that's a good idea. I really I need my sources. Like a good essay, it needs to be well researched. Sources. But anyway, people have urges, and people need to deal with those urges. Lads wank. Just lads wank, ladies and gentlemen. Thank you. Go on in. Intellectual stuff. Men in fact wank. But no. But if you take away porn, people are going to start wanking to weirder things. I mean, people start getting off to the 6-1 news. You know, pretending poor Sharon Dillon is naked under the table. That's not fair. Today, car bomb went off in Tehran. Yeah, tell me about that sexy car bomb. You know, the Angela spells be like foreplay. You know. Against pornography, there's arguments thinking, you know, it warps people's understanding of relationships and sexuality and basic functions of the human anatomy. But you know, dependence on pornography, it's you know, it's not a good thing. Someday you'll be with your partner who you really like and you really care about, and things will move and that's okay because you've seen all the moves in those videos. You know what to do, and things will get started. Jesus fucking Christ, what are you doing? I just thought, where did you get that pineapple? What the fuck is this shit? It's just, you know, in the video, I'm a woman, not a blender. Where did all these Mexican boards come from? Pornography, you know, it's downright dangerous. I mean, you know, afterwards, my God, Claire, are you okay? Yes, myself and Damien wanted to spice things up, so we tried doing the Mexican fruit salad last night. I think I broke a kidney. But you know, so you know, there are arguments against pornography. Pizza deliverers may get very confused. In porn, if you successfully deliver a pizza, you are rewarded with an evening of pleasure with a sexy woman. Every fucking time. I'd say the amount of sexual assault cases involving pizza deliveries. Ding dong. Here's your pizza. Jesus Christ, what are you doing? Sorry. I didn't order pineapples! Yeah, so, you know, enjoy sex, enjoy it safely, enjoy it to the max, and wank. Have a good day.
We thank Robert for his time speech and call now on Amir, our records correspondent, to read the minutes of
I'm going to keep this short and sweet because obviously me and Rob know very little about porn. We've never been in porn. It would be a very terrible movie. Amir and Rob in sexy, sexy, sex. Me and Rob in the corner like. We're here to debate the topic of porn should be banned. I didn't know where to go with this, so I'm going to give you my experience with porn since I was 9. When I was 9 years old, I did see the first picture of a naked woman. My friend brought me to the forest where the picture was found. Obviously, back in the day, porn was made in the forest by squirrels for little boys to find. When I first saw it, I thought, disgust. I was an articulate boy as well. I said, "What the fuck is that? You're supposed to do what with that? No, I'm okay with the shit I got going down here." That's when I made the conscious decision at 9 years old that I am a homosexual. I didn't see anything again until I was 13. I went to my friend's house. He suggested we watch Penetration Princess. I was so ignorant to what he was saying that when he said princess, I thought we should bring my little sister to watch this too. That was followed by the most disgusting minute of my life, followed by the best minute of my life, because at first it was like, oh! But then I was like, oh. Let's see. I thought sex was so private that my parents didn't even know about it. When I found out they did it, my head exploded. And when you first watch porn, you don't know how to masturbate. So when I was young, I walked around angry for 1 year. Why are you making me feel like I'm the only one? You know that feeling where you would just walk, you get erections for no reason. You'd be talking to your mother, "Hey, what's the weather like today?" Doing. At 15, I finally had the balls to buy a porno from Xvision. I had it for 2 days. I watched it 46 times. I'm happy. I was so happy with them, I forgot to return them. Guys, I'm telling you, you do not know awkward like I do. When your mother comes in and goes, your Indian mother goes in and comes in and says, "Hello, Mir, Xvision call today. They're looking for Gangbang Princess 3 and Pocahontas. Is there something you want to talk about?" That brings me to today. Porn is so accessible. When you're 15, it wasn't. I used to masturbate to the weather lady on RTE. She used to be like, "Hey, Donegal." And like, "Oh, see Donegal again." Followed by your whole body going, "Ugh, what'd you do that for?" And when I'm watching porn, I'm not thinking about enlarging my penis or girls in my area. I live in Sandyman. I doubt there's a girl named Shaniqua and Yolanda in my area. When you were 15, you couldn't study and wank off the same material. I couldn't imagine wanking off to my maths book, but my dead friend did once. His exact words were though, "Oh no, it wasn't weird, because it was like, fuck you, maths." Not like, "Oh, polynomials." That's me. Enjoy the debate, guys. Thanks.
Okay, well, thank you here for that very accurate speech on the records of our last meeting. And we move now to the public business of this evening. But before we do, quick plug, we have some free tickets to the village tonight. If any of you were going to go there, we were going to go out in general instead of having to pay 10 for these sports and tickets. We told them we'd sell them, but we're just going to give you them for free because we sound that way. So if any of you and they will cost you a free ticket and that'll get you into the village free tonight. Well, that's my story over, and our guest is still not here. So fun stories about porn. Who is the leading lawyer in pornography in Ireland. Who is our local parish priest. Our local parish priest is not a big fan of porn.
And when she returned to the Netherlands at the end of her year, she very thoughtfully sent me a copy of Playmates in Paradise, which is filed away in my office. Now, of course, pornography covers a very, very broad range. And it's in the nature of emotion of this kind that there's an element of simplification involved. But what I want to say to you tonight is that if you look at that whole range of pornography, there are certainly substantial categories of it that you must accept should be subject to some kind of legal restraint. Because obviously everybody has their own favorite kind of pornography if they are in that way inclined. But there are certain departments of it that clearly appeal to a very ugly side of human nature, to say the least. Because a great deal of pornography is based on aggression, it's based on hostility, it's based on subordination, it's based on giving the consumer of it a sense of superiority over the people, a sense of control, a sense of power over the people who are depicted in it. Now, of course, freedom of expression is often invoked in this area. It's often said, well, pornography is a kind of symbol, it's a kind of expression, it doesn't have a relationship to reality. I think one of the things to bear in mind is that pornography has the same kind of relationship to sex as looking at pictures of cheese has to appreciating cheese, for example. Because pornography appeals to a very narrow range of the senses, a very narrow range of the imagination. But at the same time, we can see pornography as a kind of practice, I think. Because pornography is not really about conveying ideas, it's not really about conveying a vision of the world, it's not really about evoking higher emotions. It's about a very specific kind of practice that people engage in as part of the consumption of pornography. And so in that sense, pornography is a kind of sexual behavior as much as it is a kind of expression. Now that means, of course, that we have to judge it by those standards. And I think most people would accept that a wide range of sexual behaviors ought to be accepted and tolerated, and even if we also accept that there are sexual behaviors that are harmful to others, that cause real pain, that cause real suffering, and that corrode the nature of the society. society in which we live, and that those kinds of sexual behavior ought to be controlled just as much. Now, as I mentioned or implied at the beginning, different countries have very different standards in approaching pornography. And even though the gap between Ireland and the Netherlands is not as wide as when that student in the 1990s was so shocked by the fact that we banned Playboy here, there are still important differences between different societies. The techniques of control also differ between them, and that's a factor to be borne in mind. Now, I've spoken in very general terms so far about different kinds of pornography, what kind of pornography might be banned. I think in terms of the motion before us, and it would be interesting to see what the other side says, there can be very few people who genuinely speak up in favor of child pornography, for example. Now, of course, you can say there's a very big difference there because the people who participate in child pornography, the children at least, are not free consenting participants, and indeed they suffer real and terrifying harms as a result of their participation in it. But of course, at the same time, there are also forms of child pornography that are created without the involvement of any actual children. There are simulated images of children having sex with adults where no actual child is involved at all, or where a child's image is taken and digitally altered and it appears to be engaging in sexual activity. Is that kind of pornography to be allowed? Is that kind of pornography something we're willing to accept in our society simply because no child has actually been harmed in the making of it? Even apart from child pornography, which is probably too easy an example to take, there are other instances. Now, some of you will have noticed that in the United Kingdom in recent months there's been a very notorious, a very celebrated case where somebody was prosecuted for this relatively novel offence of possession of extreme pornography. That is pornography which involves the use of violence against an individual, the depiction of violence against somebody for purposes of sexual gratification, and also, for example, involves the mutilation of that person's genitals or other parts of their body. Now, it's interesting in that particular case that the accused person was acquitted, that the defense very skillfully persuaded the jury in that case that this person was the victim of an unjustified prosecution, that this was really just his private sexual behavior, which involved insertion of parts of the anatomy into other parts of the anatomy, which is not to everybody's taste, without going into further details. But a jury of 12 good men and true were persuaded that that was really his own private concern. As a lawyer, I'm perfectly happy to live with those kinds of consequences. Indeed, it probably would be better in this jurisdiction if we had a system where the criminal law dealt with these matters rather than the censorship of publications boards, the classification agency as it is now for publications and other productions such as videos and films. But again, there seems to be a very plausible reason why such laws ought to exist. They were introduced in the United Kingdom, after all, following cases in which it was demonstrated that a brutal murder had been committed in at least one case by somebody who was an established consumer at increasing levels of intensity and increasing levels of extremity of extremely violent pornography.
Murder and rape, 3-day porn.
Well, that depends on how you define porn. I mean, there's an interesting historiographical argument about whether pornography is something that emerged in the 18th century or perhaps in the 16th century. It's difficult to interpret the graffiti from Pompeii, for example, although no doubt you devote a great deal of attention to it if you have the opportunity. So what I'd like to say is, the basic argument I make is a very simple one, that pornography covers a very broad range of phenomena. And you must accept, not that there are deviant cases, not that there are unusual cases, not that there are anomalous cases where things that might be considered to be pornography should be subject to legal restraint, but that there are a wide number of areas of pornography that ought to be properly subject to legal restriction. Because even if you believe in a harm principle, which perhaps people will refer to later tonight, even if you stand with John Stuart Mill and you say, well, people should indeed be entitled to the moral freedom to engage in whatever behavior they please, as long as it doesn't harm others. I think on any sensible or intelligible understanding of what harm means, which can't involve some kind of scientific or statistical demonstration in all cases, we must conclude that pornography in many of its varieties causes a harm which the law ought to protect us, our children, our women, everybody in the community from. Thank you very much.
Speech and move now to Ms. Karen O'Neill.
research for this debate, I decided I might as well go to the source and watch some porn. So bear in mind, it's probably the first and last time in my life I'll ever be able to watch some porn, and claim that it's for research purposes only. So I was going to take full and utter advantage of that. So there I was, laptop open, watching some porn featuring this kind of busty blonde who was, in the wise words of Sir Mix-a-Lot, truly little in the middle, but she packed much back. So I was admiring this body on this woman, and I was thinking to myself, how on earth can one attain this figure? So I did a little bit more delving anyway, and I actually found a porn star who had her own fitness video, aptly called Get the Body of a Porn Star. The funny thing with these porn stars is they don't fuck around when it comes to their fitness videos. Excuse the pun, but it's kind of like raw film. It does what it says on the tin. So with that, I was watching a few extracts from the video. I actually ended up watching the whole video. It was that good, recommended to everybody. But I actually have come to the conclusion how one gets that ass. And I have two words for you, and they are lunges and squats. Now, for anyone who's not gym savvy, I was going to take a volunteer from the audience to show what lunges and squats are.
You do it.
I was I was hoping to keep this 18 rather than R-rated. No volunteers, grant. I'm just going to take it that everyone knows what it is. But these women and men are putting in serious gym time to attain and maintain these incredible figures for our enjoyment. And personally, I think they should be applauded for it. And would I ban the celebration of these fantastically figured specimen? Hell no! So I'm going to take it that the majority of the audience has had sex, and for anybody who hasn't, I would highly recommend it. But for those who have partaken in fornication, John and I, they'll agree with me when I say that sex is physically exhausting. It's almost like a workout in itself. So I did some research into the energy output of sex, and I actually found out how many calories it burns. So I have some statistics for you, so listen up, kids. So on average, one could burn 34 plus calories per half hour by kissing, 100 plus calories per half hour by giving oral sex, not receiving, you lazy bastards. A whopper 114 plus calories per half hour by the physical act of having sex itself. You can burn 8 calories by just undressing another person. I mean, you can't make this shit up. So now obviously these are averages here. It largely depends on whether you're found missionary or, I know, into really vicious sex, whatever you're into. But it's no wonder that 10 minutes into sex, you're red in the face, you're sweating, you're gasping for air. To relate this back to the motion, porn stars are having sex for 20 minutes, 40 minutes, sometimes even over an hour. Now, I know it's edited, but they don't even break a sweat. I mean, that is true physical and performance right there. They're like these kind of super sexed up Olympian athletes. But unlike the Olympian athletes of London 2012, we get to see them have sex. I mean, what more could you want? Like, they're role models for fitness. Like, during the London 2012 Olympics, which I watched a lot of, I watched Jessica Ennis win gold and head top on. I thought to myself, that's nice. found myself getting really emotionally involved in some of them. I watched this scenario actually about this guy, we'll call him Joe. And Joe had been lusting after his super hot neighbour for a while. But alas, dear friends, she had a boyfriend. But so then one night Joe heard a knock on the door, and who was it? Hot neighbour lady in her finest lingerie. She'd just broken up with her boyfriend and needed a shoulder to cry on. So Joe, she was kind of just there like a boohoo, Joe, comfort me, and then BAM! Anal sex. With this elated feeling of joy for Joe. And unbeknownst to myself, I went around to the rest of the day with this big smile on my face, like, Joe did it, guys. He's one of those. And that's porn for you, promoting the dramatic arts since the birth of the internet. But I also think that this is my favourite point, that porn is very educational both for women and for men. Obviously I'm a woman, so I'm biased, well, supposedly. But for men especially, I think the close-ups of the female area can prove very informative. Like, you've probably all seen the meme on Facebook, clitoris. I'm not familiar with that Pokemon. There are some guys out there, and you honestly feel that you need to draw them a map of all the kind of major womanly hotspots for them to finally get the picture. It's kind of it's kind of like a fun game of Dora the Explorer. If Dora was a sex fiend who said Spanish words with a sexy Spanish accent. But something inherently wrong with referencing Dora the Explorer. So last point, I'm finishing up now. Many argue that porn gives men an unrealistic image of women, that we're all blonde, big boobs, and enjoy anal on blowjobs. It's not a perfect world, men of the audience, okay? But I don't necessarily agree with this. See, as scouting around the porn sites researching, I decided to have a flick through the categories available, and as I was doing so, a particular song came to mind. And I thought it would be befitting to quote it today. So here it is, without further ado, by the inspirational and insightful Calvin Harris. And it goes a little like this. Prepare to have your minds blown, by the way. I like them black girls. I like them white girls. I like them Asian girls. I like them mixed race girls. I like them tall girls. I like them short girls. I like them brown-haired girls. I like them blonde-haired girls. I like them big girls. I like them skinny girls. I like them carrying a little bit of weight girls. Thank you for that. Belligerently drunk. And I find it kind of ironic that the clientele that they're seeking are kind of sex and porn mad young adolescents, but sure, I won't judge. Thank you all for listening, and I'd like you to oppose.
Announced that he was separating and leaving his second wife and his 12-year-old child by this woman, and he was shacking up with a woman who was 30 years his junior. And explaining the reason for his decision, he said, well, I may live another 5 or 10 years, and I might as well be happy. And I think that's a fair enough aim to have in life, wanting to be happy. Indeed, that is really what drives all of us. That is the fundamental drive in every person, for everything we do, the desire for happiness. The question really is, where do we find our happiness? What is it that makes us happy? And the problem is that we have, in a sense, a kind of an infinite desire for happiness. If we take anything that we were really keen to get, even porn, and you get it, and afterwards there's a sense of disappointment that it doesn't really kind of fulfill the person's desire for happiness. You come to college, you think it's wonderful to get into college, and you're here a short while and you think, well, it's no big deal. So you're looking for further happiness and you think, well, if I get my exams, then I'll be happy. And you get the exams and again, it's no big deal. And you think, if I get a job, and you go through life all the time looking for happiness. And the problem with happiness, the desire for happiness, is that it's a kind of an infinite desire. Or if you like to put it differently, it takes something infinite to satisfy us, to bring us complete and total and full happiness, to give that meaning and purpose to our lives. An ancient philosopher said that our hearts were made for God and they cannot rest until they rest in God. Now that may sound like a kind of sentimental piosity, but in fact it is a profound anthropological statement, one of the most profound statements we can make about the human person. That we're made for God and we cannot rest until we rest in God. Problem is, we live in a culture that says to us, forget about God. There's no God, or if there is a God, he's really irrelevant. Just kind of live life for the day, live life for the moment, and forget about any kind of a bigger objective in life. And ultimately what we're talking about is the culture of hopelessness. That really kind of the person that has no belief in God, the person that has no expectation of eternal life, eternal happiness, is ultimately a no-hoper. I take it at the end, please. The person has got lots of little hopes in life, but no ultimate hope for their life. Their life ultimately has no real meaning. They're just simply top of the food chain. Later, thank you. Yeah, simply top of the food chain. Now, in that context of this culture of hopelessness, which is so prevalent in our Western world, along comes Hugh Hefner and Co. And they tell us, here's the way to be happy. And they provide porn and whatever else it is. And they say, this is the way to happiness in life. And in fact, there is something really pathetic about that. People talk about adult material. It's not adult material, really. It's inadequate material. The whole idea of pornography. What is the idea behind pornography? It is so that you can indulge in solitary sexual pleasure. Now, how pathetic is that? Ultimately, you know, that is a little bit, David, thank you. Ultimately, that is a little bit like sending yourself a St. Valentine's card. And then being delighted that you got it. person. And here, in pornography and the use of pornography in solitary sexual pleasure, it's turning that back in on oneself. And that's why I say the Valentine's card. The Valentine's card is meant to express love for somebody else. And yet here the person is turning it back in on himself or herself. Really sad, really pathetic. The reality is that human beings are made for something greater. They are made for greatness. Every human being is made for greatness. I would suggest to you tonight, when you go home, look in the mirror and say, I was made for greatness. And when you get up in the morning, look in the mirror again and say, I was made for greatness. But realize that you will only find your greatness in dedicating yourself to something that is truly great and something that is truly noble in life. You will only find your greatness ultimately in dedicating yourself or finding your happiness in Almighty God. And that again it's not a piosity I'm giving you. I am trying to point out to you a fundamental thing in your own life. Many of you are lonely people. You come here and you have friends, you chat with people, but ultimately you are alone. You know it yourself. And kind of the pornography is only just deepening that loneliness. What I am saying to you is, go for the culture of life. Go for the culture of love. Go for the culture of hope. And go for the culture that will bring you true happiness in life. And don't be sold a dummy. Don't be sold a bogus happiness with pornography or whatever the heck it is. Thank you.
Under debate is not about your deciding what you want to do with your own sexuality, what you see and what you read. It's about you, or a collection of you, known as the house, telling other people what they can see and what they can read. Now there are some things that are so sacrosanct, like individual rights, that no democratic process has any business touching. One of those things is access to information and knowledge about the basics of life. And one of the basics of life is sex. After which I want to dispute some of the major arguments for banning it, and then I want to defend its value as information. As entertainment. What's wrong with entertainment? I define pornography as a graphic depiction of sex. The graphic depiction of sex is the genre of literature and film in which human sexuality is the primary focus, and it's done explicitly. I should quickly point out that pornography is explicit sex between consenting adults, because if it's not between consenting adults, if people have not consented, then in fact it is kidnapping, it is rape, and it is assault. Now, no one disagrees with that. If a child, a woman, or a man is forced to participate in sex, then it's kidnapping, rape, and assault. So moving on to some of the major arguments against pornography, a big one, and one I hear perhaps more, I'm coming from a North American context, but I think it's pretty much international, is that violence against women is violence, that pornography is violence against women. And you'd think my definition of consenting adults would cover that. But many people do an end round against this argument by saying that women or whoever are pressured or brainwashed into consenting. In other words, they have not truly consented. Even in the presence of signed contracts, which are becoming very, very prevalent in North America, that's pretty much what the porn industry runs on these days. Even in the presence of contracts, people have not truly consented. I want to quickly offer two rebuttals to anyone who endorses that argument. First, how dare you? How dare you? Women have fought for centuries to have their contracts honored, to have their legal consent to own land, to own their own wages, to legally participate on the same legal stage with men. How dare you say that an adult woman signing a contract and giving her consent is trivial, is to be negated? Let me become less emotional. My own experience. I had a book come out in 1995 from St. Martin's Press called XXS, which is in America the term that's used to describe true porn, hardcore porn. XXS, A Woman's Right to Pornography. In doing the research, I was lucky to know John Stagliano, who's one of the major porn producers in America, and one of my best friends is Norma Janelle Modover, who is the founder of an organization called Coyote. It's call off your old tired ethics. It's for sexual workers, porn stars, prostitutes. And I was lucky because this gave me an opportunity to enter these communities and talk to women. And women who very rarely trust anyone. And in the last 20 years, I think I've probably talked to about 1,000 sex workers. Of those sex workers, about half of them were porn actresses. I have not met anyone who has been coerced into pornography. I have met prostitutes who have been. So I believe the data. They have no reason to lie to me. I wasn't offering them government grants. I wasn't offering them a lesser sentence for what they were put in jail for. I wasn't offering them any benefit other than just asking them questions. I see no evidence that there is anything oppressive to tell them that you will use laws, you will use policies and institutions to tell them that they cannot freely sell what other people want to freely buy. And as a non-porn actress, but as a woman, I find it oppressive to be told what to read, what to view, and what to feel about who I am sexually. The third point is morality, in terms of a major argument against pornography. And here I'll be very brief. I'm being beat. You know, as long as what you do is peaceful. Your morality is yours to choose for yourself. It's none of my business. I don't want to restrict your access to information. I don't want to restrict your access to knowledge. You need to go and find it for yourself. And what I want is the same treatment, the same respect. And to conclude, pornography, or at least the atmosphere of sexual freedom that I grew up with, was part of what allowed me to define who I am sexually. I'm a different generation than you are. I make no judgment about who you are. But I know that one of the most important discoveries that you will ever make about yourself is who you are sexually. It's an incredibly important aspect of who you are as a human being. I wish you all the luck in the world, all the luck in the world, to go out there and honestly find out who you are. In my research, I've met lesbians who said that the first time that they felt they were not a freak was when they read lesbian pornography and they connected with something. This is part of the information, part of the free flow of knowledge, which is the most incredible thing about our culture. Don't fear words. Don't fear images. Do not fear pornography. Thank you.
That's the beginning of the speech. Now the final speaker in proposition
Firstly, thanks to Circa and the LNH Debating Society for inviting me. And unlike yourself, Father, it scratched my head when they put me on that side of the fence. But I'm running with it. So, good evening, everybody. As I said, it's a pleasure to be here, and it's great to take part in the debate to tease out issues. The porn industry is not a provider of harmless adult entertainment for the following reasons. The harm is in the entertainment. And this is not a religious belief, even if religion might claim it, or seem to be the area that claims it at times. We are more than mere bodies, more than physical beings, more than this flesh that you can touch. Most observers will agree that our being extends in both directions beyond our birth and our death. We therefore inherit our physicality, and it comes with a whole set of do's and don'ts. We accept these from those in authority, be they our parents, our teachers, church, in the belief that our survival depends on it until we come of age. Coming of age spells freedom, and implicit with it responsibility. We are responsible to society for the choices we make. We are part of that society, and when we make choices that are not productive, it means we then live off those who are productive, and that's not fair in society. The human race judges herself in terms of how well we learn from the past in order to improve our lot going forward, in what is for each of us a short stint on this planet. The result defines some as civilized, some as not. It either sees civilizations growing or in decline. civilizations past have stood or failed based on how productive they were. Whenever the people in a given civilization saw themselves as having arrived, as we might say we have in the Western world, and began to indulge in pleasure for its own sake, and not as part of the overall creation process, it was the beginning of the end. In other words, when they became self-indulgent, they perished. The Roman Empire is one such sad example of this in our hedonistic final chapter. We can in fact protest against form, aside from on the moral grounds levelled at the supply end of the industry, those involved in it, or her clientele, those who consume it. Especially the tired old argument of male exploitation of women. There are arguments besides. The protest is on this basis. These images, these porn images, demand of us a spectator status, and their presentation creates artificial appetites. The pornography industry takes advantage of the healthy human interest in the human form and repackages it. Something meant to be practiced between a couple in a loving relationship, which can be the basis of procreation, something which is perfectly natural and fundamental to our very existence, is given an artificial veneer, hyped up, made into a consumable product that you may choose to buy, made so readily accessible in our touch-a-button and see technological age, and becomes a spectator sport, costing vast amounts of time and money. I believe we can better employ our precious and limited time on this planet. When we make the healthy choice to live fully productive lives, live to our full potential, we inadvertently make a choice away from those things that are counterproductive and wasteful of the one finite commodity we cannot afford to waste. And that is time at the end. Indulging in pornography is a waste of time.
On that point.
At the end, time that is better spent interrelating with other human beings.
On that point.
God knows it's a time-consuming thing, cultivating relationships with people. And especially, perhaps, the opposite sex, or if it's the same sex that you're attracted to. In fact, most of us find you have to kiss many frogs in this life. Finally, at the end, finally, as aforementioned, our being is beyond the mere physicality. We are multi-dimensional. A purely hedonistic paradigm is an affront to the reality of our existence, the fullness of what we are. We are psychological, we are spiritual, we are social, we are political, we are self-aware, we are religious, we are metaphysical. We exist in a three-dimensional, tangible, physical reality. To appreciate it, we have five senses. Images are two-dimensional. They do not engage all the senses. As a result, pornography only titillates and never satisfies. This dissatisfaction leads to addiction, as neglected senses demand satisfaction. In fact, they arouse a desire in us to connect, to relate, which is natural, but it never satisfies. Pornography is addictive. And I put it to you, nothing addictive is ever harmless. Thank you.
Opposition, and indeed the final speaker of the debate as a whole, Mr. Martin.
Yes, first of all, I'd like to thank the invitation here tonight to speak to your esteemed society. That's only been blocked by the appearance of Michael O'Toole amongst the previous auditors. My name's Mark O'Toole. I'm from the men's site, Joe.ie, and probably enough I have the man to do as I'm here tonight. So my debate is, my side of the argument is going to be a tiny bit scrambled tonight. When I'm travelling around the country, generally when I say I work for a men's site, I get a lot of raised eyebrows, and I just want to outline that we are not that kind of men's site. Although, judging by certain pictures we had up of Rosanna Davidson and Kate Middleton during the week, the hits they did, our owners getting ideas, we might not be the type of men's site that we are for much longer. Which doesn't benefit any of you, but to be honest, if you do get into pornography, you're not going to like me being involved with it. Unless you like your pornography unsatisfying and very I suppose I was listening with interest to the prop side of the argument tonight, and it was really interesting and had some points I was going to make, but I find myself having to answer some of their debates. So I might get back on to some of my own points at the end, but we're just going to roll with it and kind of make the few points that I'm going to. And I suppose one thing that is kind of in absence of debate tonight is that this is not only part of the debate about pornography, although I'm sure that's why you're all here and you want to see some positions being made, and some of you were kind of brave enough to do that. This is a debate about censorship too, and from the outset, John, you mentioned Playboy and how it was, what you were lecturing, it was banned in Ireland. I did a little research last night. Playgirl is actually still banned in Ireland as of 2010. So when we're asking who's banning porn, who are we giving the authority to ban porn, and what does that say about our society and about us? I would posit, and I'll take that at the end too, I would posit that the fact that Playboy is now freely available to buy, and that Playgirl isn't and is still technically banned, and Playgirl has a large following with both gay males and obviously females in other parts of the world where you can buy it. I would posit that that speaks to a previous society where we were dominated by a Catholic hegemony, a paternalistic society, and one that was deeply unhealthy. So I'll say that from the outset, John, and who we're giving power to censor is pretty much a bad thing. You also mentioned the extremities, I think, in terms of banning porn, maybe also banning child porn or such extremes. One of the things we cover on our website quite briefly, and actually we're about an interview with Bruce Booker of the UFC coming out on Friday at UFC, is mixed martial arts. Now, just because we cover that doesn't mean that we're also implying that everyone should go out and slapping people on the street. Because until quite recently, MMA was licensed to happen in Ireland and indeed America. So I thought that argument was kind of flimsy. Father Brian, I kind of agree with your points in general. I do think we do have to look for deeper happiness, and I do think we have to look for deeper meaning and value in our life. But I don't think banning porn is going to do that. There's two particularly eminent people who have done some really good writing about sex. One is Alfred Kinsey, who you might have seen in the Liam Neeson movie. I beg you to kind of have a look at some of his work from the late 1940s and 1950s in used to be his lawyer. And Gay Claes, who's a personal hero of mine, a great literary writer, who wrote a book called Feel Like This Father Brian by Neighbour's Wife. And it was basically got in behind what sexual practices happen in bedroom in America, and great variety behind the scenes, great variety of expression, great differences in sexual behaviour that happens behind the scenes. And I'm not talking about the screen, but just talking about reality. And here in Ireland, because until the 1990s and flowering liberalism, we haven't had that, so we're still playing catch up there. And I think by banning porn, we're banning people for exploring their sexuality and exploring their own sense of the sexual being. And I don't think that banning porn will help anybody in the search for that happiness. It just limits the exploration we do as people, and I think that's slightly unfair. I would also say the mention of St. Valentine. St. Valentine, I don't think had anything to do with love in the end. I think he was murdered in a pretty violent and horrific way. So, but I'm not going to suggest that we should ban religion either. I just think we should be free to practice and not pass moral judgments on people, judging by what they want to do, purely because we don't agree with it within reason in society. I'd also like to take that point up with Michelle. Michelle, you also said we are part of it. We are part of society, we're responsible to society. This week on the site we had some coverage of Kate Middleton and Rosanna Davidson. Incidentally, Rosanna Davidson's kids pretty much brought Joe away, even though way too many kids. So I had to close down momentarily. They were a lot more popular than Kate's. But getting back to my point, I suppose your own colleague Alan Shatter is now talking, and there's time, so I'll mention one of my points. It's supply and demand. I kind of reject the overall premise of this debate because I don't think you can censor anything in a day and age where the internet exists. Can I do a quick straw poll? Who looks at porn? Hands up. Come on, don't be shy. On a regular basis. So there's an interest, there's a demand there, and demand has to be supplied, and if you try to ban what is being demanded, then you might get what John's talking about. You might get things being fetishized, things being controlled underground by people that probably shouldn't be allowed to control them, and that's probably a worse possibility. I would also say, so therefore I would reject that. I would reject the sense that in this internet age we can probably ban or censor anything. I don't think that's going to happen. I reject the entire house proposal. I don't think that's going to happen. I don't think it's going to happen in the first place. And secondly, I'll leave you with a quote from Scrubs, Dr. Cox. If they close down every porn site on the internet, there'd only be one site left, and that'd be bring back to porn. So supply, demand, you can't stop it, and I don't think it should be stopped because it lessens our own ability to find ourselves as people, to explore ourselves as people, and I beg to oppose or propose whatever I'm
Thank you, Mr. O'Toole, for his fine speech. And now open the floor to questions or points from the audience.
Yeah, just on the final speaker on the proposition side there, a couple of things. First of all, it's almost presented as if pornography, or everyone here at their individual sexuality as a utility. You talk about porn basically being almost, you talk about porn being a waste of time in many ways. That is incredibly insulting on some levels. First of all, I mean, the sheer fact that people are allowed to engage in even what you might view as damaging, irrational behavior. Every single person here at some level, most people here may have had a drink in their lives, they may have played a game of football, they may have had a cigarette. These are superfluous things, but are things nonetheless that are massively important in enjoying life. Irrationality is part of enjoying life. And not only that, to view people's sexuality as a utility is massively against any idea of civil liberty, of personal liberty, or even of ownership of your own sexuality and your own body. Personally, I think it's absolutely terrifying that somebody can hold that kind of belief. Not only that, this idea that we heard on the same side of solitary sex being somewhat sad and somewhat depressing. Solitary sex is part of life. It is something that is quite natural. It's grand, and I suggest you try it yourself.
Sounds to me like you're quite a collection of Valentine cards. You know, all this talk about freedom. Well, first of all, I have the motion that the House would ban porn. I'm not sure that that's the best way of putting it. I would be more inclined to say the House would reject porn. So I ask you just to think of it in terms of that way rather than, because banning brings you into a whole different debate. So it's a question, I would suggest that you would look at it that way. We're talking about freedom and choice and so on. And basically it seems to me that we're talking about really a banjaxed notion of freedom. There are really two kinds of freedom. There's the freedom of the child that sits down at the piano and kind of just hammers away at the keys without knowing what he or she is doing and making some kind of a cacophony of noise. And, you know, this child is free to do whatever it wants. But then you have the professional pianist that sits down and is able to play a sonata or whatever it might be. And this person has freedom for greatness. This person has the freedom to produce something wonderful. Now that kind of freedom is something different to this other kind of slapdash kind of freedom that has become so popular in our society. And the question is, we're not just kind of called to be great pianists or great footballers or whatever it may be. We're called to be great people. And freedom really, the authentic freedom, is what allows us to be great people. And simply using pornography or whatever it might be for self-indulgence is destroying one's own greatness. Thank you.
You were saying about the type of freedom that someone might have playing the piano and playing it well. Well, they have to start somewhere. They have to find the keys. You can't just sit down and play La Ronde without first learning the keys on the piano and learning the notes. There has to be some sort of induction stage before you can...
I basically was going to respond to the response, and your question led right into it. I'm not going to talk to you about the freedom to be great. I'm going to talk to you about the freedom to live your life simply and as honestly as you can. Maybe you'll be great, maybe you won't, but live honestly, and whether or not you become great, the idea of exploring who you are sexually, which means as much information, as much knowledge, as much exposure as you possibly can, is key. It's always been key. That's why states basically clamp down, totalitarian states clamp down on all information. They want to control, social control. Freedom is social flow of information. So I understand what greatness means. I'm a religious person myself. I understand that. But just live your life honestly.
We will take two more and then finish up.
Just sort of asking from the proposition, do you not think it's actually slightly totalitarian that I own my every thought, action, and second with my mind being productive for society? And moreover, do we really think it was hedonism that brought down the Roman Empire? I'm pretty sure they were having a whole lot of sex most of the time. And then some other factors involved, like empires getting a little bit too big and unruly and just some other problems that might have brought down society.
Just on the point of masturbation before being self-indulgent, what about couples who use it because they maybe need a bit of spice in their relationship? Or what about people who aren't currently having sex with their partner? Do they have no sexuality? Do they not express themselves sexually at all? I'll just point out now I'm an atheist, so I'm sorry.
Sorry.
Just briefly, look, the way I look at it is like sex is a natural thing, right? You make nothing of it, you're missing the point. You make everything of it, you lose. But the issue on pornography is that it's taken something that's pretty natural, and yeah, we need to explore our sexuality, who we are. It's a dimension of us. It's not the be-all and end-all of us. At a certain point in our life, it's maybe something we explore more than others. But it's packaging it up for commercial purposes, for the most part, and selling you something that is way overhyped beyond that ultimately lets you flat. And it is like drink or whatever, it's drugs, whatever you want to do. And yeah, maybe in retrospect, there's lots of people who look back on their lives and say, well, you know, that was a particular juncture where I wasted my time. That's the point. So, yeah, and productive life isn't about being an economic unit. It's about the fullness of what you can be, as brilliant as you can be. And it's not about you being compared to the person beside you, because your brilliance is not her brilliance. And if I try to be as brilliant as you, I'll only be copying you. So we all have our own individual brilliance. And we get distracted by this other stuff that is telling us, hey, you know, this is the way. Look, we all make our own lives, and I agree with that part of it. But you know, lots of times we sell ourselves short.
out for all the nights from warm, from outside.